A warm welcome to all. My video today is titled The Relevance of Linguistics, Contributing to Social Justice. In this video, I will be continuing in fact, to talk about the importance and contribution of linguistics but focusing on social justice. This is a video that I shared in a prior This is a slide that I shared in a prior video. I spoke about the importance and contribution of linguistics, but I focused on enhancing communication, number one. Today, I will focus on how linguistics contributes to social justice. With regard to number three and number four, I'll take them up in subsequent videos. So let's begin with how linguistics contributes to social justice. First of all, we need to understand what is social justice. It is about creating a fair and just society where distribution of resources such as wealth and opportunities is equitable, and where the dignity and humanity of every person and community are valued and affirmed. So it's about every individual and every group in society deserving a fair and equitable treatment, access to opportunities, protection of their rights regardless of their background and circumstances. However, there are injustices and inequalities in societies. For instance, there's inequality in income and wealth. There's also gender inequality. For instance, the underrepresentation of women in leadership. Then there's gender-based violence. With regard to race and ethnic groups, there is also inequality in terms of unequal opportunities. Then with refugees and migrants, there are also inequalities with regard to rights that are afforded to them. So these are examples of injustices and inequalities in societies. But social justice itself means that working towards a society that is fair and just. Language and linguistics have a role to play in establishing or working towards social justice. First of all, let's understand how are language and social justice connected. Language is implicated in issues of social justice, and language is integral in mobilizing social justice. The smallest particles of language, for instance, morpheme and phoneme, can have important meanings for social justice. I've taken these examples from this book here, the reference is there. The use of the X mark, used as a proxy signature in land sale treaties between indigenous people and European settlers in North America in the 18th and 19th centuries. The X mark as a proxy signature indicates a form of agreement on land sale treaties. But this morpheme, just the X, as an element of language, was not actually a form of agreement. In the context of colonization, it signaled cohesion. According to scholars, the X mark as a proxy signature documents injustices and duress from the indigenous point of view. So this language element, just this morpheme, is a representation of injustice on a group of people. So this is how language is implicated in social justice. It's an example. Then look at the use of X in a name. The civil rights leader, Malcolm X, rejected his slave name, that is the last name given to him at birth, and instead he used X in his name as a surname to stand collectively for all his unknown ancestors' African names. So this act was an act of resistance to social injustice, particularly slavery, and the use of this X as his surname was his effort to not only resist social justice, but it was a way to mobilize social justice. Okay, these examples come from this book. Then let's look at linguistics. How is linguistics, which is the scientific study of language, How is it relevant in social justice? We have seen how language is implicated in social justice and how it has a role to play in mobilizing social justice. But now let us look at how the scientific study of language, that is linguistics, how is it relevant in social justice? Well, I have taken two branches of linguistics, two areas of linguistics, sociolinguistics and applied linguistics, as examples to show you how it is relevant for social justice. Because these two areas of linguistics, they can shed light on how language is intertwined with power and equality and can offer insights to arrest social injustices. For instance, both the areas can aid language planning and policy and can combat bias and discrimination in society. Let's first look at language planning and policy. LPP refers to the deliberate efforts by authorities, especially governments, to influence the development, use, and acquisition of languages within a speech community. So, linguistics provides the empirical data, theoretical frameworks, and methodologies necessary to make informed, effective, and equitable decisions about language policies. Which language within a particular region should be the standard language? How is the standard decided? So these are issues within language planning and policy. And in order to make these decisions, linguistics, we need linguistics to provide the data, the theory, and the methodologies. Without the input, language policies can risk being arbitrary, being impractical, and even detrimental to speech communities. Here is how linguistics helps in LPP. You see, in deciding a standard within a region, when you want to implement, how do you decide, with regard to planning and policy, you want to decide on a standard language. First of all, you need to have a comprehensive description and analysis of languages within the region, and linguistics can provide that input. Before any planning can occur, government authorities need to know what languages are spoken, how are these languages structured, and how are they used. So, descriptive linguistics can describe the phonetics, phonology, morphology, syntax, and semantics of the languages. Through dialectology, which within sociolinguistics, you can get this information because sociolinguistics can give a description of these elements of language so that we understand the dialects, we understand the varieties of language used in a particular region. Corpus planning is needed in standardization. When you decide on the standard language, you need to establish a corpus. If a government decides to standardize a particular language, linguistic information of the language are needed. For instance, in the context of Malaysia, the standardization of Bahasa Malaysia or the Malay language involved linguists studying the various Malay dialects to establish a common lexicon and grammar. They had to identify existing variations of the language, the various dialects and the accents involved, analyze the grammatical and lexical features of the different varieties, and then recommend a standard form for use in education, media, and official communication. So with regard to the standard form, decisions had to be made about spelling, grammar, vocabulary, and even pronunciation. So this is how linguistics is important in getting that comprehensive description and then helping in making the decision which variety becomes the standard variety and what are the details of that standard variety with regard to spelling, grammar, vocabulary, and pronunciation. Then moving on from the standard, linguistics also can promote inclusive language and education. It has a role here because linguistics can contribute to developing guidelines and educational programs that promote inclusive language, challenge linguistic prejudice, and foster respect for linguistic diversity. Once a language has been decided as the standard language, then what happens to the other varieties or the other dialects in that particular region? They cannot be disregarded because it can lead towards loss and death. And this will not contribute towards a just society because every dialect and every variety of a language is equally important. So with regard to curriculum development, linguists can advocate for educational curriculum that teach about language variation, the arbitrary nature of a standard language, and the value of all dialects and accents in a region. So this helps to counter linguistic racism, fosters a more inclusive understanding of language, and mobilize a fair and just society where every variety has got a place. So there are no avenues, that will move a language into loss and that every language gets maintained. So this counters linguistic racism. So this is a role that linguistics has to play. Promoting linguistic, promoting inclusive language and education. Now moving on to the second role of linguistics in social justice is in combating discrimination and bias. Discrimination and bias is often hidden within language use. You can't see it because the language use is normalized. It becomes so normal that you do not realize that there is a bias within it. And that moves towards what we call stereotypes in language use. Let's look at the example of gender bias within language. Traditional English often uses male generics like mankind, chairman, fireman. These words are so normal that we do not even realize that the words perpetuate an implicit male as norm bias, making women seem secondary or invisible. Linguistics' role is by systematically analyzing such patterns, linguists can advocate for and help implement gender-neutral language guidelines in legal documents, corporate communications, and public discourse to promote inclusivity and challenge ingrained male stereotypes. Okay, we can challenge it. Instead of saying fireman, say firefighter. Instead of saying policeman, say police officer. Chairperson instead of chairman. So this is how linguists can promote social justice by combating gender bias. Okay, where women are as included as men. The references are from this book here. I've given the reference. Now, linguistics can also uncover subtler gender bias. For instance, look at this sentence. Girls are as good as boys at maths. It looks neutral. However, there is underlying this is the standard for maths ability being more towards boys, right? Boys are the default standard for maths ability. Girls are as good as boys. So there is gender discrimination in this sentence. So linguistics' role is that it can highlight word order, sentence structure, and implicit comparisons, and can subtly reinforce biases, and linguistics can make recommendations for more equitable phrasing. Instead of saying Mary is a great engineer as good as Steve, we can rephrase it and say that Mary and Steve are great engineers. So this will dismantle the bias and promote social justice, reducing the gender biasness and the gender stereotypes. So these are subtle, these are actually subtle uh, biases, that come in language use every day. So linguistics has got a role where it can uncover these biases and it can promote social justice by making recommendations for more equitable sentences or equitable phrasing of our expressions. These are other examples that show gender bias. They are taken from newspapers and they exist even today. Women are represented, for instance, on the basis of their appearance, even in professional settings. For instance, the Russian tennis player Sharapova is referred to as a Russian babe. So the word babe is discriminatory, gender discriminatory. Then here, the British Home Minister Jackie Smith causes a stir with her low-cut top. So wearing a low-cut top has got sexual connotations, and causing a stir is also gender discriminatory because she is a woman. Now look at how the male is referred to. David Cameron is applauded for sporting a new hairstyle. So he is applauded, that's a positive term, and having a new hairstyle. He unveils his new look, a center parting. So here you do not get the kind of sexual connotation that is being directed to women. So this is showing that even today in newspapers, men and women are portrayed in stereotypical ways, showing gender biasness. Other groups are like migrants. There's also biasness in migrants are referred to. Dehumanizing labels are used where they are treated as less than human when they are referred to as illegal migrants. And then their actions are focused as negative. They are referred to as migrants are aggressive or migrants are liars and so forth. Then metaphorical language use where we have metaphors of natural disasters used when they are directed to migrants, for example, a flood of migrants or a wave of refugees. So this type of language frames migration as threatening uncontrollable force rather than a complex human phenomenon. So this kind of language use justifies hostile attitudes towards them and hostile policies, which is not at all fair. It is an injustice. There's also an othering effect towards them, where they are separated from the mainstream, the language of us versus them. They are referred to as foreigners or outsiders. So highlighting the differences between them and mainstream, reinforcing the idea that migrants do not belong. So in that case, they are viewed as being different, and it is difficult to embrace them and become part of the mainstream community. So movements towards unity is hard, and you cannot embrace diversity if you look at them negatively this way. So this kind of language use actually contributes to social injustices. And linguistics as a scientific study of language can uncover these kinds of language use through its methods and theories. Moving towards the conclusion, in essence, linguistics, being the scientific study of language, serves as a powerful tool in a fight against social injustices by shining light on the way language constructs social injustices, inequalities, discrimination, and bias. Linguistics can create an awareness of the role of language in mobilizing social justice. Resist and mobilize social justice. We can strategically use language to dismantle injustices and promote a more just and inclusive society. So this is how linguistics has a role to play in social justice. These are my references, and with this, I would like to end my video. As usual, before I go off, I would like to thank everyone for staying with me until the end. Please like my videos, and I appreciate it if you subscribe to my channel and provide feedback and comments that I could pick up on to improve my videos. Thank you very much. Bye for now. Take care and keep safe.